The Butcher Baker, the true story of Alaska's deadliest predator. Authorities found a map in Robert Hansen's Anchorage home marked with tiny X symbols, showing where the so-called Butcher Baker killed and buried his victims in the wilderness. In the 1924 short story The Most Dangerous Game, author Richard Connell tells the story of a wealthy Russian aristocrat who, bored with hunting animals, invites a big game hunter to his island to hunt him for sport. Since it was published, the unsettling idea of humans hunting humans has fascinated many. The concept has appeared multiple times in novels, TV shows, and movies, but mostly it has stayed in the world of fiction. However, in the 1970s, Robert Hansen, known as the Butcher Baker, turned this idea into a horrifying, years-long reality. Although Hansen maintained a respected image in town, he let his dark side run wild in the woods of Alaska. During the 70s and early 80s, Hansen targeted sex workers and exotic dancers, abducting them to release in the woods so he could hunt them like animals. This is the horrifying true story of the Butcher Baker serial killer. Who was Robert Hansen, the Butcher Baker of Alaska? Unlike his fictional counterpart, Robert Hansen was not an aristocratic nobleman. Born Robert Christian Hansen on February 15, 1939, in Esterville, Iowa, his father, a Danish immigrant, owned a bakery. He was also a strict disciplinarian. Hansen's childhood was difficult. He worked long hours in the family bakery from a young age. Although he was naturally left-handed, he was forced to use his right hand, which caused a lifelong stutter. As a teenager, he was painfully shy, suffered from severe acne, and was frequently mocked for his stutter. The boys at school teased him, and the girls he liked rejected him. He was often called a loner. As a social outcast, he found comfort in spending time alone. Over time, he became an avid game hunter, channeling his anger and fantasies of revenge into stalking animals. In 1957, at age 18, Robert Hansen joined the United States Army Reserve, hoping to leave behind his troubled youth and build a better life. For a while, he succeeded. After serving a year in the reserves, he became an assistant drill instructor in Pocahontas, Iowa, and even married a young woman he met there. But Hansen still felt mistreated by the community and sought revenge. In 1960, at age 21, he convinced a young bakery employee to help him burn down a school bus garage. When the boy later confessed, Hansen was arrested. His wife divorced him, leaving him alone and in prison. Although he was released after 20 months of a 3-year sentence for arson, he was jailed a few more times afterward for petty theft. Still, he managed to remarry another local woman. Finally, Hansen decided he had had enough of the contiguous United States. In 1967, he moved to Anchorage, Alaska, which was about as far from his life in Iowa as he could get. He moved into a small community, had 2 children with his wife, and settled into a quiet routine. He was well liked and opened a small bakery. But while the townspeople mostly bought into the facade of the happy baker with a family and a knack for hunting, some cracks showed through Hansen's squeaky clean exterior. In 1972, he was arrested twice, once for the abduction and an attempted rape of a housewife, and again for raping a prostitute. Unknown to authorities, his killing spree began in 1973, likely emboldened by his ability to walk free after his early crimes. The year 1976 saw Hansen arrested again and sentenced to 5 years for shoplifting a chainsaw. However, he appealed that sentence and was released, while he continued to prey on strippers and sex workers whom he forced to act out his twisted fantasies. Cindy Paulson's lucky escape. In 1983, more than a decade after Hansen moved to Anchorage, a 17-year-old girl named Cindy Paulson was found running frantically down 6th Avenue, barefoot and handcuffed. After being picked up by a driver and returned to safety, Paulson, a prostitute, told her story to the police. She described being held hostage by a man who'd handcuffed her to his car, held her at gunpoint, and taken her to his house, where he chained her by the neck. The man raped and tortured her repeatedly, before attempting to load her onto a plane and take her to his cabin in the Matanuska-Susitna Valley about 35 miles north of Anchorage. As the man prepared the plane for takeoff, Paulson managed to escape, leaving her shoes behind as evidence. Robert Hansen fit the description of the kidnapper perfectly. Paulson even described his stutter and identified his plane. But police were still reluctant to bring him in. After all, though he was no stranger to trouble with the law, the local baker was well liked in the community. Hansen admitted that he had met the girl but claimed she was setting him up because he had refused to pay her extortionate demands. When he told police about his strong alibi, provided by a friend, he was released. The FBI tracks down the butcher baker. Meanwhile, Alaska state troopers were convinced a serial killer was on the loose. Several sex workers and dancers had gone missing, and troopers were beginning to find bodies. When 2 bodies were discovered in the Matanuska-Susitna Valley, along with .223 shell casings nearby, Hansen was a prime suspect. But the police needed proof. This led to the involvement of the FBI, including now retired FBI agent John Douglas, who helped pioneer the field of criminal profiling, and whose story is depicted in the Netflix series Mindhunter. Douglas put together a psychological profile of the killer based on the details of the case and the injuries inflicted on the recovered bodies. He theorized that the killer was an experienced hunter with low self-esteem and a history of being rejected by women, and that he likely had a stutter. Though he had been cleared several times before, there was no doubt about it. Robert Hansen fit the profile almost exactly. What's more, he owned a bush plane and a cabin in the Matanuska-Susitna Valley. The police soon obtained a warrant to search Hansen's plane, car, and homes. What they found shocked them. The horror that Robert Hansen's victims had endured was almost too macabre to believe. How Robert Hansen hunted humans like prey. In Anchorage, Hansen was a respected business owner known for his skill as a bow hunter. The den in his home was decorated with hunting trophies and animals mounted on the walls, and he even set a few bow hunting records. But what no one knew is that for more than a decade, the hunter had also been collecting trophies from another kind of kill. Hansen mainly targeted sex workers and exotic dancers from around Anchorage. He would kidnap the women and either drive or fly them in his private bush plane out to his cabin in the remote Alaskan bush. If the women didn't put up a fight, he would rape them and bring them back to town, threatening them into secrecy. But those who did not cooperate suffered a truly nightmarish fate. In Anchorage, Hansen was a respected business owner known for his skill as a bow hunter. The den in his home was decorated with hunting trophies and animals mounted on the walls, and he even set a few bow hunting records. But what no one knew is that for more than a decade, the hunter had also been collecting trophies from another kind of kill. Hansen mainly targeted sex workers and exotic dancers from around Anchorage. He would kidnap the women and either drive or fly them in his private bush plane out to his cabin in the remote Alaskan bush. If the women didn't put up a fight, he would rape them and bring them back to town, threatening them into secrecy. But those who did not cooperate suffered a truly nightmarish fate. X marks the spot. While searching Butcher Baker's home, police found an aviation map of the area hidden in the headboard of the bed. It was marked with tiny X's denoting the kill and burial sites of his victims. Some of the X marks matched up with where police had found bodies. There were 24 X's in all. What's more, in his psychological profile of the killer, Douglas had predicted that the murderer would keep souvenirs from his prey. Sure enough, in the basement of Hansen's home, police found a stash of jewelry. In the stash was a necklace that belonged to one of the victims. Faced with the evidence in 1984, Hansen confessed to murdering 17 women and raping another 30 women over 12 years. Robert Hansen was sentenced to 461 years plus life in prison without parole in 1984. He was imprisoned at Spring Creek Correctional Center in Seward, Alaska, where he died in 2014. As part of a plea bargain, the Butcher Baker was only ever charged with 4 of the 17 murders he confessed to, and some believe he killed more than 20 women. In exchange for the reduced conviction, Robert Hansen